Yeah.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the New Media Show. My name is Todd Cochran, and we got a great show lined up for you today. I tell you, it's if it isn't one thing, it's another. Rob, it's just like I've been, I start messing with the studio, and I've always made a rule: we'll only make one change at a time.
Yeah.
And you break your own rule, and you're like kicking yourself, saying, "Why did you do, like five things at once?" But you guys can hear me. We can see each other.
That's progress.
That's the main thing, right? But
Yeah.
good morning, everyone, and of course, we want to welcome Dave Jackson, our guest this morning from School of Podcast. Good morning, Dave. How are you?
Good. This is exciting. This is one of my favorite shows, so I'm officially giddy.
Oh, good. So, I tell you, we've had some interesting guests over the past couple of months. I leave every show with a few notes, usually on things to change or do or try. And I don't know, what have you got out of the show so far as you've been watching?
Boy, that's a great question. Just insights into like the guests. Last week I loved the John Lee Dumas one just because I knew your thought. Just because it was the lovely, he was kind of saying you're not my target audience, and you're kind of going, and you know what, you're not my target podcaster. So that was kind of the embracing the awkwardness of that was just fun to listen to. And going back to, the early shows when you guys were talking about that little Chrome widget thing that you stick in your HDMI slot. See, I'm really up on the tech here. But who was? I think it was the guy from New Media Expo, wasn't it, Rick?
Oh, Rick. Yeah. Yeah.
And you guys were talking about, what is that thing you throw into your? It's the Google Chromecast.
The Chromecast, yeah.
Chromecast, yeah.
So that and I guess the thing I love about it, we all have our own little bubbles, right? That we run in. And it's nice when you have somebody from another bubble come in and you go, oh, wow, I need to go play over there too. So it makes it exciting because there's a whole like California podcasting bubble that I'm slowly learning about, that there's a whole group out there and they all talk podcasting and things of that nature, new media, things like that. So it's nice when you can find a new circle to then make your circle even bigger. So that's one of the things I love about it. You guys, in many cases, I know who your host is, but in some cases, I don't. So
I think that's been the same here. Is you thought you knew everything, and you're like, wow, I didn't know about these guys or these 25 shows or 100 shows or small network or the way they've done things. It's been quite fun. Rob, how about you? You sitting behind the mic here every weekend with me. What's been your takeaways from the show?
Well, I think about the show, what I can bring to the show, and that's probably, what you guys are talking about is a reflection of how I think of this show, and really, it's bringing new people to the community that are involved in podcasting that we don't naturally think of, and maybe they're not exactly podcasting or podcasters. But there's some connection there that is important to the future of the medium, and so that's kind of how and that's how I think of it, and that's what I get out of it too. Is I get to talk with these folks that are doing things that can help podcasting and to drive this whole medium forward. I'm still, being down in LA, just like what Dave said, there is a bubble down there of podcasters that the general podcaster community doesn't really have a lot of contact with. I mean, at times I have trouble having contact with those folks because it's a different culture and it's a different world down there. But as I get more integrated into it, I can bring more of those folks on here. The comedian folks and those networks and what they're trying to accomplish, and I think it's an important part that I hope this show can provide, is kind of trying to integrate all these different players that are not really communicating back and forth or being involved in the New Media Expo, but they're still big podcasters, but they're not really connected to the community.
I think I like to, from my perspective, you may take this, well, take it whatever way you want it. I'm glad we're not alone. For many years.
Yeah, that's right.
There was a stretch there that it was, there wasn't any new players. It was, and that isn't always good if there's not, major people that are making major moves and building stuff. You'd like to see that happen for the entire space. It's
Yep.
healthy for the space.
Well, that's one of the things the other thing I really like about this show is because you guys have such a vast background. I mean, obviously Todd, Mr. Raw Voice, you've got a huge view from your chair of what's going on in the space. And then Rob, with your history with Microsoft and now with Podcast One, and then your history of having a radio show and syndication, you guys just bring a lot to the table. That's the thing I always like is you get to peel back the curtain a little bit and see what's going on. And those are the other things I think that are really, really cool.
There's some stuff that we want to talk more about, but we have a, I guess for a better word, we have to be cognizant of, each other's business positions and so forth. We have to kind of be careful of too. So,
right.
We try to bring on, and that's why we have, bring folks on and pick their brains and anyone that's in this space, I think you can gain a whole lot of knowledge very quickly on what the ecosphere is if you start back at episode 1 and listen all the way through. And I know that's a lot of listening, but you can almost build an entire business plan out of what people say, which I think is pretty cool. But so anyway, that's what's happening with you, man. What's been going on?
Well, I'm in the process. We were just talking before we started. I'm in the process of upgrading my server at the School of Podcasting. I have a good problem, and that is I'm getting too much traffic, so I'll be doing that. And it's funny, I for the longest time didn't do anything live. I mean, you do all your stuff live. You sit here, and we're all super familiar with you behind the chair and in your background. And I guess it's been a year now. I started a live show on Saturday mornings called Ask the Podcast Coach. And I started it just because people would ask me questions about doing things live. And I'm like, well, I don't do live, so I guess I need to figure out how to do that. So I started doing a show live, and it is a bit addicting once you get there. But we have a nice group of probably 15, 20 people now that show up in the chat room every Saturday, and been doing that. And it's fun because you talked about new things. And today, one of the callers, number one, it was cool that a caller called in from Sweden, which was fun because you get that reminder that podcasting is a global audience. And we were talking about, I guess it's Tune In, which I thought was something new. And all they did was they did a nice facelift. And I went to sign up, and it said, your email is already associated with this account. I'm like, really? I'm like, I don't remember this. And they basically gave themselves a nice facelift. So we talk about technology over there as well. And a lot of people calling in with questions about, the fun-filled answers. How do I put music into my podcast and that kind of stuff. So that's what's kind of new. Looking forward to Podcast Movement in August. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting show. I'm just hoping that they stay focused on the podcasting part. I think they are, and I think so far from the lineup of speakers and everything, it's not going to morph. But it's an episode. It's not an episode. It's a first event, so I'm sure they're going to learn a lot from it. But the community definitely got behind them and raised a bunch of money.
Yeah. And then right now I'm doing research. I spent about 2 or 3 weeks in some cases doing research for different episodes. And I've been telling people for years when it comes to media hosting, it's Libsyn and Blueberry. That's it. Those are the 2 people I recommend. And I see so many people now talking about SoundCloud. So I actually went out and fired up a SoundCloud account and I'm doing their beta test. And it's we were talking today about using the right tool for the right job. And right now it's not the right tool for the right job.
Well,
so it's interesting seeing different hosts that keep popping into the space. So I'm excited about that as more and more tools come on board. I know Daniel J. Lewis from the Audacity to Podcast is just getting ready. I think he did launch a tool about where you can have your reviews emailed to you. There are a couple different tools like that. So I love to see new tools come into the space. Sometimes when you have, I love tools built by podcasters for podcasters. That's usually the best one, or people that are released in new media. I know Michael Hyatt is getting ready to release his premium theme, his Get Noticed theme. And, that's one that's made for people who want a platform and are kind of marketing in that aspect. So that, again, it sounds like the right tool for the right job. And I've seen some it's behind the scenes videos of that and things like that. So it's good to see those things coming in. It's always interesting because the more that come in, the more competition, the more better those tools get. And so it's always fun to see those new things come in. And then you do have the Podangos of the world and the Mevios of the world, and the Gigavox. Those have come in, and sometimes most of those, again, when I hear somebody say I'm using the service and it's free, to me that just means, well, let's start the calendar to see how long it is till it goes out of business, because I can't buy groceries with a smile at the grocery store, and I'm not sure how companies think they can get by not charging for their service. So that's always fun.
Yeah, it is. So this guy that's building this template, is it a custom WordPress template? Is that what it is?
Yeah, his name's Michael Hyatt. He's pretty popular. He has a great book called Platform. He was the head of a publishing company and number one, New York Times bestseller. He does a podcast called This Is Your Life. He's been a speaker at New Media Expo, and he focuses on leadership. So he's had this custom theme built over the years just for him, basically. And he's been beta testing it for about a year. And Gary Leland of Podcast Movement and Podcast Pickle, Michael Hyatt, there he is. And he does Platform University. He's got a membership site. And from what I understand, there's a lot of custom posts in it that if you want to, because sometimes you want to write a full blog post, but sometimes you just want to say, hey, I'm reading this book, and here it is. So there's a lot of custom posts built into it. And I know a couple of people that said it's super easy to change the colors, because for me, I don't need a mega theme. I want to be able to add my header. I want to be able to change the colors. I want to be able to figure out what side I want my sidebar on, or if I want 2 or 3 or 1, and then change the colors of that. Throw in some social sharing buttons, and I'm done. That's about it. I don't really need that much. And for the longest time, I used to recommend Thesis because you didn't have to know a bit of code. That's my other thing. I don't want to have to learn CSS. I don't want to have to learn PHP because my audience doesn't know that stuff. So it has to pass that test. And for the longest time, Thesis was exactly that. That was 1.85. They came out with Thesis 2.0, and they went the direct opposite. You need to know a bunch of CSS. You need to know all this stuff. And you can make some great-looking sites if you know that stuff, but it took them right out of my recommendation. So I'm still kind of looking for the perfect theme. I found a couple that I'm playing with now, but it used to be that was the theme. Everybody I know, Cliff Ravenscraft was using Thesis. I'm using Thesis. A lot of people are using it. And boy, when they came out with 2.0, everybody ran to the hills and said, well, this isn't for me anymore. So it'll be interesting to see if something comes up to fill that void.
Yeah, one thing that we're going to do with Geek News Central, and it's been a long time coming, I think I've been talking about it since January, is the theme that my site goes to will work on multi-site. And so basically for these guys that have multi-site implementations of WordPress who are, got small networks, 10 or 15 shows or something like that, or maybe under that. I think what we'll end up doing is probably making the theme that'll be for my website publicly available. We haven't fully decided yet. There'll be a few tweaks here and there, but what we're going to, what it's been and what we're doing, it's heavily optimized for speed and for running a small network, and we're pretty excited and being able to cross promote across different because once you go multi-site, what ends up happening then is you have each site gets its own landing page. It's no longer a category feed in WordPress. So newmediashow.com. Well, instead of going to a subs page on Geek News Central, we'll go to newmediashow.com. But at the same time, we want to be able to cross promote on any other properties, and we'll be able to do that. One of the things I'm excited about with WordPress 6.0, PowerPress 6.0 is the implementation of the playlist. We tweaked what WordPress did, and I don't know if you saw it yet or not.
Yeah, I've played with it a little bit. And
go ahead.
Have you tweaked it to where, because the only thing I didn't like about the playlist is I wanted to link to past episodes.
Yeah.
And my past episodes are on either Blueberry or Libsyn.
Yep.
And so there was no way, the little bit I played with the playlist, I couldn't say, hey, here's the file over here. I had to upload it to my media center in WordPress. And then, so I was like, well, that's fine. I mean, I don't know how many listens I'm going to get on my playlist. But for me as a content producer, I know a lot of podcasters that will say, hey, welcome to show number whatever. And they'll say, to know more about us, go to our About page. Here's our contact page. And always go back and listen to the first 5 episodes. I always hear that. Well, after you have a decent back catalog, finding your first 5 might be a bit of a trouble. And I thought, wow, this would be a great use of a playlist. So yeah, what have you done with PowerPress and the media?
So you say go to listen to the first 5 or the last 5?
First 5. So maybe the first 5 explain who you are, and maybe it's a podcast about. I know The Art of Charm. Jordan has one where he says go back and listen to that. So it's all about kind of the basics. So you might be on episode number 60 and you're wading into the deep end of the pool, and so a new listener is like, man, I don't know what they're talking about. Well, if you go back and listen to the first 5, now that gives you that basis to know where we're coming from, or maybe the philosophy behind the podcast, things like that. And if it's been a while, they've got to dig sometimes or do a search or things like that, or people would make a page with a link to those. And I thought, wow, this playlist will be awesome.
Well, the playlist will serve some of that function, but it won't serve the way we have it configured right now, and I don't think maybe we just haven't coded it yet, is when you put the playlist up, it shows the last X number. So like on mine, it's the last 10. And I think you can configure how many of the last shows will actually show up in the playlist. It'll work for audio or video. It's tied to basically not necessarily your feed, but we do some WordPress magic to be able to populate it. Because before you used to have to host the media separately in a different location, actually right up on your blog, in order to get the playlist to work. And basically, Angela just tweaked the code, and now I don't know if you can see it or not, Dave, but I'll bring it up on the screen. Here's the basic audio player, and you click play. Any way these you click, it'll start to play. Same thing on video. And you can do. And we've got it so it's set up as a short code. You can make a page, as I've done here, a page of essentially a page of players. And so it's the first step, I guess, for better words. It's a first step to getting it so that it'll actually work, where it doesn't matter where your media is hosted. It can be hosted anywhere. And
that'd be nice.
Yeah, it's going to be really nice. And along with some other stuff that we've been long overdue to bring to the plugin, I'm really excited to be able to announce. I think you'll be really excited when you see what else we're bringing to that. But this is just.
Well, there's one feature that I've always wanted. I don't know if it's in this new update.
What feature is that?
That would be the ability to link to a specific time. With my show, I usually cover 4 or 5 topics, and so I'll have a play at the top of the show, and one at the bottom. And it'd be great to go, here's where I talk about this. So now what I'll do is I'll put like a timestamp. At the 13-minute mark, if you want to hear this section of the podcast, go there. It'd be great like YouTube does. You can say, here, link to that. I don't know if that's possible with an MP3.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if the HTML5 players are capable of doing that yet. The Flash you could, but I don't know about HTML5. That's make sure Angelo has that on his list. Send him an email on that, because he'll put his thinking cap on and see if that actually can be queued. Because we have the. It's tricky, because what you end up having is if everyone coded at the same bit rate and all that stuff, and you had a media file that was, let's say, 60 megs, you would be able to pretty much know where to push in that file to get to that spot. But with everyone doing different bit rates, I think it's a little harder.
Yeah, that would be next to impossible.
Yeah, I'm not saying next to impossible. It's one of those things where we'll have to go back and definitely look at it. But
Todd, is the playlist does it start playing all the episodes one after another, or do you have to initiate each episode separately to be able to listen?
Rob, that's a good question. I haven't tried it.
Okay.
I don't know if it'll autoplay through all of them or not. Based on how I know Angelo builds things, I would probably think no, but that's probably a good good idea. Main thing we didn't want it to do is to autoplay when it loaded.
Yeah.
That's, I hate that when I go to a website and all of a sudden it's just like have my speakers up and it starts playing something I wasn't expecting.
Yep.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that whether they should be or not, a lot of people are listening to, podcasts and videos at work.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, you're sitting there and all of a sudden you hear the new media show come blaring out of, cubicle 13, and everybody knows Bob's not working on his report. So
right.
You have to be careful with that.
And Bob is over there saying, shit.
Yeah, how do we? Yeah, and Bob is never going to come back to your site. That's the other thing.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Like, hold on a second.
Talk about pissing somebody off.
It's true, though. That's absolutely the truth.
Yeah.
And the biggest abusers, believe it or not, are the sci-fi science sites. And for some reason, every science site wants to autoplay something for you. I'm just like, stop. But this, as far as the player goes and maybe having the first 5 episodes, that's probably something that can be done. He's just going to have to, add that. And basically what it is, the short code, he's got a whole bunch of definitions. It'll work with taxonomies. It'll work with categories. It'll work with channels. It'll work basically with everything that PowerPress supports currently. It'll work with. He just may not have coded day take. And something here, here's a challenge too. We'll just have to. I'm sure it'll be on the wish list, and it'll be another thing you'll have to code up. But we're excited about PowerPress 6.0 because we're going to introduce something that people haven't really thought about a lot in podcasting, and something that's really important. And once that's out, I think it's going to help people in their websites. I guess for a better word, I'll leave it at that.
Is it beta now or is it launched?
It's beta, but some of the prime features that we've been, I don't know if he's got on beta official. I think this version is released. I don't think it's got any of the other stuff in it yet. So,
okay.
Just if you're not on the beta, email mike.dell@blueberry.com or michael.dell@blueberry.com or rawvoice.com and he'll get you on the beta.
So is there a timeline for when this special new and improved is coming out?
We're going to talk about it next Tuesday, but I'm hoping within the next week to 10 days. We've had this ongoing, I guess for a better word, our shopping cart. We've when you build your own shopping cart, there's so many, and we're going through what is it called, PCI compliance or something like that. It's basically where on the credit card people, you get this highest level of compliance, and we've got through the servers have been certified and all this stuff, and I don't know if it's code review or whatever we're going through now, but we're close to being done. Matter of fact, he released us some credit cards that basically fake credit cards. The industry has test. I think they got a dozen test cards. So we've been running the test cards and testing that. So as soon as he gets that done, and as soon as we get that pushed out, we'll be we got like 2 other projects we got to close, and PowerPress 6.0 is one of them. So plus
that sounds interesting.
What's that, projects?
Well, just the whole shopping cart.
Oh yeah, the shopping. Well, basically, what it is we're going to give everybody the ability not to they can use their credit card. They don't have to use PayPal all the time. So we'll have, Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, American Express, the whole 9 yards. But the shopping cart was, it serves 2 purposes. Commercial customers, we want them to be on auto billing, and ties all that in, so that essentially it's a manpower savings. Everything we build to be, save us time manpower wise.
Well, that, and there are those people that are just completely anti PayPal.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And in some cases with very good reason.
So yeah, it's true, and we probably lost some customers because we didn't take just a regular credit card. So that's changing. It'll be hopefully sometime next week that'll be up and running. But and the main thing is we're not storing no credit cards. It's all going off to someone else, and Because
that's the part that I've always avoided. I'm like, I don't want that kind of responsibility. Thank you, but no thank you.
Well, the level of robustness you have to have, it's, if anyone's doing it these days, I guess Target did and other companies did, but it's really dumb because you don't have to. When you run a credit card, it charges. The only reason they need to hold your credit card data is if you cancel. Well, basically, the credit card processing companies send you back a transaction ID, and as long as you've got that transaction ID mapped to the customer, if they come back later and cancel, you basically do a process where you initiate a refund on that transaction ID, and it goes to the credit card processor, and I think they hold the credit card processing companies hold the credit card data for 30 days, and that's what they do. They're designed to keep that stuff safe. And
you would hope,
yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, and I don't know the full mechanics of it, but the main thing is none of it will be on our site. That's the key.
A lot of the big kind of firms that do e-commerce and things like to hold on and capture all their customer information.
Yeah.
And that's why a Target does it, is its ownership of all those credit card numbers is perceived by a big corporation as valuable, right? And not handing it off to some other party.
To me, it's a liability.
Well, it is, and as Target found out, it has a lot of risks associated with it, and that's a big reason why you have to put a lot of investment in building your infrastructure to be secure, and that's not what always happens.
No. But anyway, that's so we got it's good to be busy. We're busy, and matter of fact, we're so busy that it's the point where we're going through the hiring process of hiring someone right now, and basically assistant, I guess, for a better word, or I can't remember exact title that we have for the person. And we're probably going to start interviewing for another developer here shortly as well. So, anytime you're hiring people, I guess it's good. So.
Well, what's your guys's with both your chairs? What's some of the biggest hurdles you guys are facing from your chair?
Rob.
Nice handoff on that one.
Throw that
one out. I'd say that the biggest challenge right now is the battle between standalone aggregator platforms and content. I think that we're coming into a phase of that the podcaster area, content is king, and content is starting to rule, and platforms are somewhat struggling. I think if you look at like a macro question mark about the whole space, is platforms. As I refer to platforms, I'm talking about like technology platforms, that have apps and they're aggregators of podcast content, right? So you think of an iTunes as a platform for distribution of podcasts. And I think that we're coming into a time where content is important, ease of use and access and ubiquity of access, and quality content is. And that's a very subjective term, I know, but it is very true. It's content that connects with audiences, right? And that's what this industry or this space needs, is content that can grow the audience base. And I think that conflict between being able to monetize those platforms to scale, I think is a big question. And specifically, I'm referring to folks like Stitcher and any kind of new aggregator app platform that may exist out there, of how they monetize what they do and what that relationship is to the content provider in helping them do that. Because unless these platforms start selling their apps, it's very difficult for them to get a return on investment in hiring engineers and building out their platform and growing the space. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but that's probably the biggest thing that I'm seeing starting to kind of brew and become an issue, and at least in my world anyway.
Yeah, I from my perspective, we're doing a lot of metric stuff, and getting, I don't want to I guess I'll just say it. We've got app providers, and one of our competitors has got 500-600 apps, but yet there's no way to measure that app. You have no idea that podcaster, if he's using our stat system, cannot tell how many listens that specific app got. And we've got other developers that refuse to set a user agent. We've got groups like SoundCloud, that I'm doing my darndest to make headway to get some data out of them. If they're going to be a player in a space, you've got people using their system. We'd like to, make those users get data. And if they've got a distribution point in SoundCloud, we want to be able to, really have them on board and you measure them like we do Stitcher and some of the other folks. Let's talk about, some folks are starting to put their shows in the in the Clear Channel app. So we're not getting any data out of that, and it's
the only way you can get those stats is, in fact, the only way you can get into, unless you're an A-list celebrity, is to go through Spreaker.
Right.
And then you have to go through Spreaker to see the stats. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If Spreaker can see the stats, why aren't they going to share whatever API they're using to the world? And there's a lot of weirdness that goes on with that, because you think, yay, I'm in iHeartRadio because I have a show on iHeartRadio, but they also then, you are now exclusively your RSS feed, which it shouldn't be anyway. We could get into that whole discussion. But you have an RSS feed on Spreaker, and when you are accepted into iHeartRadio, that goes away, which, in my opinion, is not a bad thing, because you want people to use your RSS feed, not the one from Spreaker. But, I'm getting some listens on iHeartRadio, but, again, people kind of have to know who you are. I don't know that anybody's searching for Dave Jackson on iHeartRadio. They're looking for the Jay Moores and the Jim Romes and the whoever the big celebrities are on iHeartRadio. But I am getting some plays, so I guess that's better than none. But that's one of those things where I remember back to back in the day, 2006. I forget the name of it, but there was there was going to be this big conglomeration of everybody was going to work together. We're going to have unified stats, or they're going to try. And I don't know whatever happened. I forget the name of the group, but CC Chapman was on there, and I think, Rob, I think you were probably on there, Todd. I don't know. There's a bunch of people, because don't we need some sort of kind of unified?
The ADM is what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
The Association of Downloadable Media? Yeah.
Yes. What happened to that?
It just fell apart.
Yeah. But, what's kind of funny is even Mark McCurry today over PodTrack, him and I from time to time talk, the tenets of what we put together at the ADM is still there. The principles that Libsyn, PodTrack, and us use in our stat system is that's written. There is, it's kind of funny because I don't know if that document's, we probably got a copy of the document, but we kind of laugh because besides there has been some changes, but the mechanism, I guess, for a certain aspect hasn't changed. It's still there. So, but yeah, I don't know if but the thing is, you've got, I would consider us three, but then there's a whole bunch of other people doing a bunch of other things too. So,
right.
And none of them have been very open about exactly what they're doing. Not everyone's been completely transparent, but.
Yeah, and the thing when I look for any kind of service, is if you're going to come into the space, if you're going to come into content creation and things like that, well, then come into the space. I was amazed. Yesterday, I was working with a client, and they were using a competitor, and I was like, well, I'll give it a shot. I sent an email to their support, and for the first time in a long time, and I mean years, I actually got a reply, and I was like, holy cow. And because my audience is people that either want to start a podcast or people who already do. And I approached a media host. Okay, so I have their target audience. They need people to buy media. I've got people who need it, and I couldn't get them to come on my show. And that's when I went, that's really weird. And after bugging them, I'm like, well, where are you at? Like, what country are you? Finally, they said Canada. I got a one-word answer, Canada. And because there was no, like, about page. So to me, it's like, I'm always amazed that when people come into this space, if you're going to come in here, well, then you better put, somebody here to interact with, because it is all about relationships. I mean, thank God, Apple has an email now that you can use, and Microsoft was way in front of that whole curve. But the thing I love is, Todd, you're out there in the Google Plus communities, and I see you in Facebook, and I see other people from other companies that are there as well. And I'm always amazed at the people that, say they want to come into this space, but then there's no contact. There's nobody to build that relationship, and more importantly, to build that trust. And I've always found that rather odd. And that's one of the things I've always liked about, the companies I deal with. That's because I can contact them and say, hey, can your player do this? And you go, no, but I'll put that on the list. And that's, to me, a key ingredient. And as podcasting and as content creation becomes bigger and bigger, we're going to see more and more people that just, I saw yesterday somebody is building a theme all around SoundCloud. And they said SoundCloud is great, and it's like the platform now. And I was like, I don't know about that. And it was, everything is now orange and brown, and I'm like, okay, nothing against them, but I'm still trying to, like you said, you're trying to work with those people, and you need somebody to kind of lead the charge from each company. So I'm amazed when I see people that don't do that.
And what also amazes me is that when a company's getting ripped, and
yes,
a certain company's mentioned in a Google Plus thing, and immediately, like the crowd with wisdom, oh, you don't want to do that, and you better be careful, and and you just say, where's the company at to not necessarily defend them? Well, to defend themselves, and
or at least to give some sort of answer or a response. I mean, Dave, I think your point is really, really a good one, and it was something that I thought about a lot working, on Zoom and in the Windows Phone podcast area for all these years. Is that this community needs a single point of contact for all these companies, and it's so important. And I think that the companies that have done that, I think typically build credibility, and that's exactly why I reached. I mean, most people at Microsoft don't do what I did.
Right.
Just kind of being accessible, putting out my my Twitter handle. I have to say, I mean, I feel like I still work for Microsoft sometimes because
I bet.
my email and my Twitter account are still getting filled up with people submitting their podcasts to me, even though I've made a very concerted effort to let everybody know that I don't work there anymore. But nonetheless, I had a meeting with the Windows Phone team just 2 weeks ago. They were explaining to me a little bit more about what's going on with their app and what, what's happening and what they actually deployed. So I am still kind of staying in contact with that, and I still get contacted by lots of podcasters that because I did a lot of podcasts and a lot of media and a lot of there's a lot of blog posts out there that list me as the guy for Microsoft, and there is a little bit of a baggage that kind of comes along with being kind of out there as a person representing a company, right? That it does kind of follow you, and it is a big responsibility to be that person that everybody looks to for a service at a company like Microsoft. But granted, that can be the case even at a smaller company. But it is, it may follow you for years in the future, and it just depends on if you want to be a good steward online and help people. And that's how I've always kind of looked at it, is I want to help podcasters and I want to help people. And if that means that I have to stay engaged with a former employer and help them, and then I'm willing to do that, and help people. And that's also what I'm trying to bring to Podcast One as well, is that same philosophy. but it does take time away from your day, from things that you need to do for your new employer too.
Right.
So, but anyway.
One thing that's a challenge for us is, we have a free product and a paid product. And our free product, we support the best we can on our forum. So, if I had unlimited resources, every contact that would come in via our contact page from a non-paid customer, we would, go the country mile to make sure that their questions got answered. But I'm a resource limited company. I'm, relatively small, and we have to tell them, sorry, we don't support the free free product in email support. We do support it on the forum. Please go ask your question there. And I'm sure that turns some people off. They're going, these guys won't support me and help me. But at the same time, we try to do our best we can on our forums to answer questions in a timely manner, and it's there for all to see, and it becomes a resource where people can find it, the same question, can find an answer to. But generally, people don't go looking for an answer. They immediately pick up the phone. There's times that I have to not answer the phone. And and people don't like leaving voicemail. So it sucks to not be able to answer the phone. But, probably the challenge is I should take CEO as an option off of our call tree, but it's right in there. I press, 1 for Todd, and boom, they reach out to me, and as much as I want to spend time on the phone with folks, I could spend 8 hours a day talking to podcasters, and it's a matter of time, and I just can't do it, and I'm sure some people are put off by it. There's a fine line.
And that's the burden that you take on when you're a single point of contact and a spokesperson for a company.
Yep.
You get put in that position, and it's not a bad position. Don't get me wrong on my thoughts here. I think it's great, and I enjoy being kind of the front face for these services and being a resource to people, because I truly care and I want to help. So it's not really a burden for me, but Todd, just like you say, I mean, there's only so much time in the day. So,
and it's, as a business owner, it's not an 8-hour day ever. I don't ever, I can't remember an 8-hour day in 10 years.
Yeah.
So,
it's a 7-day-a-week thing probably for you.
Yeah, it is. And, and I can't expect, the support guys to be on call 24 hours. So, I'm 10 o'clock at night answering support tickets, and people are, well, why, I'm shocked I'm getting a response from you. I'm like, well, it's a better response from me than waiting, till tomorrow for a response.
Yeah, I think that's just part of, we're kind of now a microwave society. I remember growing up, if I had to eat my SpaghettiOs, I had to get out a pan and heat them up, and now it's 15 seconds and we're good to go. So I think we're all.
Dave, are you saying that we live in a microwave because all of this cellular radiation that we're living in? Is that really what you're saying, or no?
We're all going to glow in the dark. Yeah, and but I think that's part of our mentality. We're just used to being able to, even with things like Spotify.
Yeah.
Now I don't have to wait for. This, I can just pull up a song, any song I want pretty much, and get it right now. So we're kind of used to now. And the bad news is when you have a problem, who wants to have a problem? So that's one thing at the top of the list that you don't want to have that hanging around. I know when in moving my website, I had to set up some new name servers and things like that. And the guys that were helping me were not, I finally said, after like 3 hours of waiting for an answer, I said, look, I've been patient. I realized you said it was 30 minutes and that was 2 hours ago. And I said, I don't want any more excuses. What I want is a solution. You have the technology. You have the knowledge. Do this for me and earn the money that I'm paying you. And finally, the guy was like, okay. So, I try to be patient, but there are those times when, and it's like you said, what do you do if, what are you going to do? Not pay me? Because it's free. So it's a tough situation that way.
And when it's 10 o'clock at night and a podcaster's trying to put their file up and they say, hey, I'm having trouble, that is the time when they are pissed and they want that file up, and you got to help them. I'm just absolutely, you hear about these people that record support calls about the person that didn't even have the computer turned on. It's like my screen is black. I'm moving my mouse and nothing's happening. The guy goes through a 20-minute thing and he turns off the on switch isn't even on. It's incredible to me that the stuff that and we back channel, we laugh a little bit like, wow, sometimes, but you're dealing with people that some people have great computer skills, some don't. And something that's obvious to me is not obvious to them. And I have this favorite thing let me show you guys what I do. Let me bring up the screen. So let me do a screen grab here of your page. So let me bring this over. I got this thing called Snagit Editor.
Oh, cool.
And so when I see something I don't like, I do this.
Yeah.
And then I have a little thing and I put a little note in there and I say, fix this.
Yeah.
and then so it's my version of a red pen, and Angelo hates it because
he knows what's happening.
He knows when I have like 5 images that I send to him, it's like, why is that there? And it's usually from a support ticket. Someone hasn't understood something, so we have a usability issue. And I'm like, no, this can't wait. This is now on the top of your priority list. Let's fix that. And that question may not come up once in 6 months, but it cost me an hour. So let's fix it so it's more evident. And sometimes you put a fix in and you make it worse because people are like, well, why is that there? And it's just. Yeah,
I also, Todd, I support podcast kind of producers, as part of the Podcast One network. And,
right.
And I get those from internal kind of podcasters in our platform and outside of our platform that publish into our platform. And things like, I'm locked out, I can't FTP, or I can't log into the tool, or something like that. And it almost always invariably goes back to that they tried their password 3 times and got locked out.
Right.
And I have to go into the tool and unlock them, but yet it creates this whole flurry of emails of, the tool's broken, and 90% of the support things that I do just to support our internal publishers and external publishers are just basic things, that they make a mistake with. It has really nothing to do with the tools are broken or anything is not working right. It's just very, very simple and simplistic things that people get snagged on.
The best thing that we ever added to Blueberry, and I add to it on a regular basis, haven't in a while. Let me go over and show you on the forum. Is a little section called FAQ. And it's basically, these are the things where I get the most questions from. And I can tell by the number of views, a question that always come in. Can I use Blueberry Statistics package without being hosted by Blueberry? The answer is yes, but I would get 3 tickets a day on that. So we put it up on the FAQ and a couple of other places. The same text is found several places on the website. And now I have a running sheet. I just have a doc, and Mike has the doc open, and Angelo does too, so that when that comes in as a ticket, it's cut and paste, send, and I'm done.
Blurbing. It's called blurbs is what they call it.
Yeah, and it's
I do the same thing.
It's pre
written stuff.
Yeah,
right.
pre-written stuff, and so you can see that particular article, or you guys probably can't see because it's small. 204. I've either someone's found it or I've sent 241 people there. Did that probably get me some new customers? Absolutely, because I can use this with whatever. That's great. Let me go ahead and sign up. So we didn't do this for a long time. And since we put this up, and again, I started adding this FAQ on March 30th, my number of tickets have went down. And, what did it take me? A couple of hours to put that stack of question and answers together. So
on the other side of that fence, because I know forums can be awesome, I can also know they can be a ginormous headache.
Yeah.
How is the headache side on that?
Generally, my rule of thumb is if we haven't responded to something and it says day 2 on there, we failed internally not responding. We try to respond to everything that's an open issue on the forum. 6 to 12 hours is the goal, and during business hours much faster than that. But after if I see that something's went day 2 and there's not a response, I'm like, the email is generally not nice that I send to my team.
I've run into a lot of like spam bots and things like that. Things like that.
We've been pretty good, and we watch it. And so far we've been pretty good. Once in a while we'll get something in there, but
yeah. So no, I've tried forums twice at the School of Podcasting, and the last time I just waved the white flag and went, never mind, because I had all sorts of CAPTCHA and all sorts of stuff, and I had to approve people manually. But it seems like as hard as you try to lock out robots and spam, and I always wonder, like, does that work? The fact that you're putting a link to Viagra in the middle of a podcasting forum, is there somebody really clicking on that? I've never quite understood that philosophy. But if you get enough robots coming at you, sometimes it's just like, never mind. Yeah. We just moved to a Facebook group. That's what we did, and that's working fine.
I'm looking for a link. Brian sent me a link to a new forum that he was absolutely impressed with. Let's see if I can find it while we're talking here. But
I know there's V Bulletin. There's one called Vanilla Forum. I used to use Simple Press, which is actually a plug-in, for lack of a better phrase, for WordPress. It's pretty cool.
Right.
And they're fun. They can be a great resource. They're also, in some cases, I always tell my clients, forums are what you use when you outgrow comments.
Right.
But if you don't have a big audience yet, all you're going to do is prove socially that there's nobody listening to this podcast.
That's true. That's a good tip of the day right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Go from comments to forums, because like we said, they're also a lot of work. You have to prime the pump. You have to give, hey, this week in our forum we're talking about, what is your favorite WordPress theme, or whatever it is, and give them something to talk about. If you just go, hey, here are your forums, talk with each other. Okay, about what? You got to give them something to go on.
Yeah, I think that there's so much conversation that's happening in these social platforms now that has kind of shifted the focus away from there was a lot of conversation that were going on in forums in the past. So unless you have a very specific purpose or a very specific community that aggregates around that forum, like you say, it's going to be a ghost town.
Yeah, I tried. The last time I tried a forum, I was doing I had a session, a class called Podcasting in 6 Weeks, where we met every Saturday. And I put up a forum, and they're all kind of like, can you just do this in Facebook? Because I'm already there. And I heard that over and over and over. And as much as I love forums because you can go right to a specific topic, you got to kind of do what your audience wants. So we put up both a Facebook group and a Google Plus community. And, I get 5 times as much interaction over there because they're already there.
Mm-hmm. One thing I find, too, is, my idea of a cool forum and Brian's idea of a cool forum might be different. Because we're, he's the creative type. I'm a techie type. And he turned us on to one the other day that's called Discourse. And he says, ours is looking a little long in the tooth. Can we move? And I'm like, first of all, the Google juice I've got in the current forum is pretty deep. But do I really want to go through the pain? Because, my rule of thumb is if I move from one thing to the other, when someone goes to that old link, they need to be pushed to the new one. And I don't allow anything to be transitioned on our website unless we do that, because it's important, that historical link stuff is important. And you can do a permanent 301, and then eventually they'll stop going to that old link. But initially, you have to have it is a lot of work. So when he's talking about moving the entire forums, I'm like, we've got X thousand people that are already registered users. Can we transfer them in their passwords? Are they going to come to the site next time and have to reset their password? So I basically put the transition to a new forum on hold, much to Angelo's relief, because he was probably like, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
But you're right. Go ahead.
Well, one of the questions I want to ask you guys, just again because of your background, that I get all the time, that I would love to hear your take, is I get all the time, where do you think podcasting is going to be, especially now there's, what's the Apple thing, CarPlay? Play Car,
yep.
Car something that is new. And, to me, I always just go, well, it's going to continue to grow. It's grown since 2004. It's going to keep growing. But the one thing I think that we're going to see, and then I'll let you guys chime in on this, I think in the next 9 months, we're going to have a resurgence in podcasting. It won't be podcasting is dead. It's going to be podcasting is useless, because we had the swell of technical people. They jumped in first, and then we had the comedian people, and now we have kind of the entrepreneurs that have come in, and another swell of people. And I think we're going to see a group of people now that have jumped in, and in about, well, what is it, Todd? 7 episodes in about 10, 2 months. I think we're going to see a resurgence in some sort of negativity about content marketing, podcasting, whatever you want to call it, because people aren't going to be able to quit their day job and sit at home in their jammies and make content and go to that. So I think that's one of the things we're going to see in the future. But I think we're going to see that every 2 years anyway, for people because not every show that goes on TV is a hit. Just watch the new fall lineup and then see how many of those stick around. So where do you guys think podcasting and content creation is going?
Well, Todd, let me start out and just say that whole conversation of the kind of boom and bust cycle, I think is kind of a totally predictable scenario. I think I think you go through kind of hype phases, and then the industry gets a little bit of a reality check, and it kind of goes in these booms and busts, right? And I think you might be exactly correct. I think there is kind of a disconnect in the what can I say, the kind of financial models around podcasting still. But I also think that we're maybe coming into a new phase that is more focused on content, which I think could lead to better monetization for a lot of podcasts, which could maybe kind of ride us through. But there's always going to be kind of cycles of companies that launched and didn't make it and fail, and then new ones come in, and so we're like taking 3 steps forward and 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 1 step back, and we just keep moving forward. And I think you're exactly right, Dave. I think that we could be coming to a kind of a bubble bursting phase here, that then we'll step back a step, but the space will continue to march forward and try and discover where it has kind of a significant footing around monetization and around being able to sustain itself. And I do see some really big companies starting to really think about this space a lot now, and I do see there is, and that's not always the answer that everybody wants to hear, but I think if you look at the parallels between what has happened on video, the audio side is just lagged, right? So this on-demand audio piece is still a relatively undeveloped market, and I think that we may be coming into a phase where it's really starting to become real, but that's going to have some baggage to it. It's not going to be as idealistic as I think a lot of people would like to think that podcasting will remain. So anyway, that's my thoughts. I don't want to dominate the mic entirely.
As far as where it's going, it's an interesting time because audio is just rocking it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
agree.
but the media buyers, some media buyers, want to be in video. The digital folks want to be in video right now, largely in video.
Yep.
The radio buyers want to buy this stuff up as fast as they consume it, as much as they can buy. But they also have a different process that they work, which requires a show to be, for better word, a certain size before they can play. And if better for worse, that's just the way it is and it's happening in the space. I was going to think, what was I going to say? There was something there was a lead into that. I haven't seen your moment here. We know that shows are going to ebb and flow. It's just pretty standard. That's not going to change. I don't think that'll ever change. But the radio folks, this is where I wanted to go. The radio folks are, for a better word, they won't admit it. They're scared shitless.
Todd. Yeah.
My kids do not listen to the radio. They do not. They're on their smartphones. My wife does not listen to the radio. She's on her tablet when we're in transit. I'm all over the place, depending on what time of day it is. And I listen to a lot of podcasts because I have to, but I'm not your typical commuter and listening to stuff. So most people in commuting are still listening to the morning drive show. A lot of folks are, to find out what's going on locally. That's just where people get their water cooler information. But the talk show guys, the talk networks, the AM talk radio guys, they are, this is where the majority of my business has come this year, is in the radio folks wanting services, podcasting specific services. Yep. And needless, and I'm not saying my phone isn't ringing off the hook, but it's been ringing a lot, and it's been radio guys calling.
Yep.
Yeah, Todd. A lot of my clients are ex-DJs.
Ex-DJs.
Yeah. They want to, they were, Binky and the Wiz in the morning, and they switched formats and now we're country or whatever it is, and they're like, all right, well, we've got an audience, and they saw what Adam Carolla did. I mean, he started off, he got fired. Same thing. They changed formats, and they're like, we want to do that. So and the thing that's always interesting is they get here, and then they're like, okay, they realize that now there's no program director who, you don't have to do traffic and weather on the 10s. And they're like, why didn't I do this before? And then it's just a matter, of course, of the joy of, okay, now how do I make money at that? And that's always the fun part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree that it's that what we may be seeing is, as broadcast radio kind of comes into this space, that's what gives us the next lift. And I think that it's a question mark right now around formats with those guys. I mean, how do they want to proceed? And I think at some point in the future, what we're going to see is podcasts are the driver of new content creation that then gets funneled back into the broadcast side. Because we're currently seeing kind of a movement from the broadcast side to the digital on-demand podcasting side. But at some point, once that process is completed, it's going to reverse itself and go back, because the broadcast side is still going to want content, and what they're going to find is that they're going to have big audiences on the podcasting side, the on-demand side, but they still need to keep those radio broadcasts going and need to have content there. But before they can actually do that, though, they're going to have to change the formats of broadcast radio. Broadcast radio can't be 3 hours for one show. It's going to have to be an hour for a show, or an hour and a half. It can't be, because that's the struggle that I see even at Podcast One, because we're kind of in the middle of, Podcast One owns like the Loveline radio show and owns other radio broadcast properties as well as podcasting. So I'm kind of, and just this last week I launched a big nationally syndicated radio show on Podcast One as a podcast, and it's so you see the shift that's happening from the broadcast side to podcasting. So it's, I think, whether or not that content is something that the typical podcast listener wants to listen to at some kind of scale, I think is a question that we don't really 100% know yet. I know that a show like the Dan Patrick Show, which is a sports talk show, is still on broadcast, but they also have a very successful podcast. So I think it really just depends on the personality and the talent of how well they make that transition from being a broadcast radio show to a podcast, because it is a little bit of a different medium. It's more of a personal connection. I think that the host has to have a real personality that connects deeply with an audience, and not all those guys really think about their broadcast in that way. And I also see new talent that we're bringing into the studio at down in LA that have never done talk radio shows before, but they're big celebrities, right? And they don't really know how to do it, and they're learning. So you have this influx of new people that are coming into the space that don't really understand the medium yet. So I think there's going to be some kind of period of time where those folks kind of learn and get better, and so I think it's all good. It's just we're just in a transition period right now.
Now, one thing go ahead, Dave.
Well, my favorite is Andrew Dice Clay. When he first started doing his podcast, he thought he was doing radio, and he was taking what he learned from Howard Stern, and he would say things like, we'd be back after this, and it's like there weren't any sponsors yet, or he would say something like, we're talking with so-and-so, which you normally do on a live broadcast in case somebody just jumped in. But on a podcast, you've listened from the beginning. I heard you introduce your guest at the beginning. Yep. Why do you need to reintroduce him 8 minutes into the podcast? So it was just interesting to see things that make sense in radio being done in podcasts. And I'm like, this person doesn't get it just quite yet.
Yeah.
I did want to go back and talk a little bit about video, and I don't want to digress too deep into this because we could get into an hour-long discussion on what's going on in the world right now. But with the merger of Charter and Time Warner, a lot of tidbits are coming out. The dirt's coming out. And during the congressional hearing that they had, where the Charter folks were getting grilled by the congressional folks, and let me back this up. Let's stop there. And I've been watching, whether you love or hate this guy, I've been watching what Glenn Beck's been doing with his network. He started off as a radio guy, went to Fox, left Fox, built his own network. He's got this thing called The Blaze. It's huge, and he has millions of viewers and followers and subscribers, and he's got a premium model. And so they've been building out this network of content. They're truly building their own ground level video network. He did a massive push to try to get into Time Warner and into Comcast, but have not been able to do so. He actually tried to bid and buy Current before Al Jazeera bought it. Well, now I guess he's in this discussion to buy this other network that's in deep financial trouble with Charter. I think it's Really TV or something like that. That's what I heard on something being said somewhere. But they were grilled in this congressional panel. They were asking him, if you guys own, if Comcast owns 80% of the U.S. Market, how are you going to open up and allow other networks like The Blaze to get into your television lineup? They're willing to pay. You refuse to carry them up to this point. Is this a political thing? Are you keeping him out because you don't want him being a channel and pushing this conservative message or whatever? And the answer was kind of interesting from the Comcast guy that was non-committal. But let's look at that. Here you got this guy, love him or hate him, on The Blaze. It's built this big network. He's got the volume. He's got the people to go and probably be a successful own channel. And he can't even get on digital, but he also understands the value of being there, and he wants to be on broadcast. Now, let's back up 5 years ago. I was at a conference, and there was a panel of Charter, Time Warner, and all these guys, and I quite literally got my butt handed to me when I asked this guy. I said, "Hey, I run a small network of independent content creators. What does it take to get on a channel on cable?" And this guy basically said 4 or 5 years and many millions of dollars. Now, go away, peasant. So it was... and I guess I wasn't surprised at the time of the answer. But if you look, even though there's 1,000 channels on your cable television, you have people still can't get access and can't get distribution on there when they're willing to pay. To me, it shows me that at some point, people are going to get so pissed off that they can't get what they want on their cable provider, that it's going to infuse cable cutters more. And when people start cable cutting more, they're going to come to the web more, and more dollars for advertising is going to come both to video and to audio. At this point, I hate to say it, but the growth of the space is going to grow no matter what, because of the inability of folks like Charter to allow this group, The Blaze, to be on a television station. That audience is going to get so fed up, they're going to leave. And when they do, they're going to come looking for content. That's where...
Well, and they keep raising their price. So you're not giving good quality, and you're raising the price. I mean, I cut my cable years ago, and I found out that I could live without knowing what the Kardashians are up to and who Bret Michaels was dating, and Honey Boo Boo and all that other stuff. And if they were smart, they would start working on a plan, because everybody wants this. They're not listening. Their customers want to be able to give me a package,
right? Say,
here, for 10 channels, it's X amount of money. You pick the channels. And they're like, well, if we do that, then, whatever, Animal Planet will go away because it's, or whatever. I mean, I like Animal Planet, but whatever. Some channel won't have any viewers. Well, then they shouldn't exist.
Right.
What's the point?
Yeah.
It's like, but those that could, and I mean, I'm assuming when a comedian puts his thing on Netflix, he's getting paid for the number of plays, or there's got to be some sort of, deal with that person to be on there. And I would just think that somewhere along the line, hopefully in my lifetime, I will see a la carte cable TV, because it's got to go that way, because that's what people are doing now. If we go back to the phone, I can listen to what I want when I want. And that idea, would be great to see on the TV. The bad news is there are a lot of really, really powerful people with really, really, really deep pockets that don't want that to happen because they're making a lot of money. And they've got friends in Congress that'll put up walls and things like that. But I'm amazed that that's where it needs to go. Whether it ever makes it there, I guess we'll see.
Let's go back to talking about a few websites. Now, you just look at The Blaze. I don't necessarily think their landing page is that great. But, they're charging $9.99 per month or $99 per year. And that's what it costs to get access to, I don't know, what do they got here? They got Pat & Stu, Liberty Treehouse, Real News. So they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, about 15 different programming choices, along with blogs and everything else. So, from a website standpoint, I don't think he's doing that great. Now, but so let's look at...
but he's doing a great job of revenue.
Oh, he's doing a huge job on revenue.
And really, I don't think that he needs cable television. I think him going to cable television, could be a mistake. It could be a waste of money. I think
he knows that there are, as big as radio is, TV, regardless, Rob, has got this audience with hundreds of millions of people. you know. So I don't know. We'll see. It might be a mistake. It might be.
Well, I'm not saying. Well, maybe I'm kind of saying it too quickly here. It's probably not a mistake. From one perspective, it's probably about credibility.
Yeah.
I think he was on cable TV for many years. And I think he liked that. I think it could be a little bit of an ego play here too.
I'm
But
sure.
clearly cable television is like broadcast radio is today. It has to change, and they're resisting the change, and that's forcing people to go to apps and go to the web to get this niche content that people want. And as long as those industries, the cable and broadcast radio, keep playing the same strategy and the same game, they're forcing their audiences to shift to a medium that better caters to their needs. And as long as that continues, our growth is going to be, it's going to be up. But once they shift, right, and at some point that's going to happen for their survival, then it could be too late, for those mediums, cable TV and otherwise, because there's Roku's and there's Apple TV and there's other solutions that are app based that could be construed to be like channels, right?
Yeah.
So I think in a lot of ways, cable TV is in the middle of being replaced right now. So
I've interviewed a couple people. Another play that's got to be hurting is satellite radio. I've talked to a couple people who have been in talks with, XM to have their own show, and they've been basically told, well, we're not going to really. You've kind of got already what you need. You can reach a global audience, and you've already got listeners. So we could have you on the show. In the one person's case, they weren't going to pay him anything. They just were looking for content for their channel, and in the end, it didn't happen. But he said they basically kind of went, we're not going to really do a whole lot for you. And I just thought, wow, that was the guys from The Art of Charm had a satellite radio show, and I don't know if they were getting paid or not, but there was another one where they just kind of figured out that being on satellite radio really wasn't much of a boost. It looked good on a resume, but it wasn't like they were having a lot of people coming up to them saying, oh, I heard you on satellite radio. Yeah. And they had a drive time show. They were getting all their feedback from people that were listening whenever they wanted to, wherever they wanted to. So,
yep.
So, Rob, you put a couple links up. The Nerdist, looks like when did they come out with this new site design?
It just came out last week or this past week. So it was a big kind of initiative for them. And Podcast One is representing these guys. And it was just kind of a new update to basically a podcasting site of sorts. I mean, that's what the Nerdist really is. That at its core is a podcasting network. And so I just thought I would share that here. It's a new upgrade to very, very visual. And I see a lot of the new content sites using large graphics and large representations visually. And I think part of the reason for that is people just don't like to read anymore. I think people just like to look at pictures, right?
To me, it's like I probably get in trouble for saying this, but to me, it's shallow. I'm like, there's no depth. It's just
it's very superficial, right?
It's definitely for a different age group. And I understand that, but the thing is, it doesn't tell me a lot. I see a lot of pictures, but what does that mean? And
it's interesting when I published my book, I was reading up about how to write a book and things like that, and it was the stat that kept coming up over and over and over was 80% of what people read is based on the headline. And, when I see a site like that, I'm like, where's the headline? It's, gosh, should I click on the picture of the girl in the bikini or the picture of Godzilla? So it's a much more visual kind of interpretation. And then it's not really depending on, it's not really showing me a whole lot about what the content is. And it's going to rely not on a great headline, but a great picture.
So, Rob, you also linked up to Overcast.fm, as supposedly a new podcast app's coming from Marco Arment. What's the word on that?
Well, I mean, from what I hear, it's coming. I mean, he's in kind of the testing phases right now, I guess. I've talked to him before, and he's very focused on audio. So I did kind of prompt him about, is the app going to support any video podcasts? And I know that there isn't a lot of discussion that happens in the podcaster community about video podcasts specifically. I think that there's a lot of thought of the whole video podcasting thing has kind of been replaced by YouTube. But I wonder about it too, and get your guys' feedback on this. Do you think that there's a future for video podcasting, or do you guys just see it kind of drifting away?
To me, one of the problems with video is, number one, you have to make sure that you've got the right format. So don't put out a, whatever it is, 1280 by 720 if it's going to be watched on a phone or a maybe a tablet, whatever that size would be. But that's a lot of bandwidth, depending on how long the video is. And I use the Apple's podcast app, and I have it set to only download when I'm on Wi-Fi, so I don't chew up my bandwidth. But on occasion, I'll be in the car and be like, hey, obviously you're not on Wi-Fi. And I'll be like, go ahead and do it anyway. And this month I've been listening to a ton of podcasts, and I got the thing yesterday. Luckily, today's my rollover day, that I was at like 93% of my bandwidth. And so I could see with video, you could chew up people's bandwidth super duper quickly. If it's, I remember Carmen Tyler had a podcast. She was Miss Louisiana, and she put in an hour-long video, and I can't imagine. I remember at the time, I forget what I was putting it on a iPod or something like that, but it's like it took up half my podcast or half of my storage space because she was putting in an hour-long video. So that would be something, depending on the scenario, that I could see as a hurdle. If we're going to start chewing up people's data plan just to watch 3 videos a month, that could be an issue.
Yeah, I don't watch any videos on a mobile device. Yeah. Usually the connectivity is not good enough to support, a steady stream of information. So, but I know a lot of people. Well, we just look at the stats. We see most people come in with browsers, or they're usually home on Wi-Fi. So it's definitely, from that perspective, that's how they're watching. And the thing is, you can't do it at the gym. You can't do it in the car. You got limited hours or limited time that you can watch video for sure.
Yeah, I'll be interested. I finally have a client who's doing both. She's got a pretty successful YouTube channel, and she said, hey, I want to put these out as a podcast. So I'll be interested to see some numbers on what it is via YouTube, via download, because she's basically putting the YouTube player on her website, and the only way you'll find her podcast then will be in iTunes. So I'll be interested to see what kind of numbers she gets.
And with this new change to the Windows 8.1 podcast app, you're only going to be found if you're got an RSS feed. I think it's a minor win for me. Your RSS feed has to be on your website, and if it's not, tough. You're not going to get found.
Well, speaking of that, I was on a conference call with the Windows Phone team. It was a week and a half ago now, and they are putting together a specific presentation online and a application form that podcasters will be able to submit to Bing to be indexed to show up in the podcast app. I've been talking with them about how they should do that, and the Windows Phone team has been supportive and working with Bing to kind of establish some processes that we can point podcasters to make sure that they get included. So it's got to be the one-click subscribe, though, Rob. They got to have that so that they can go to. They need the Bing logo or whatever it may be, like the iTunes logo. Yeah.
That's the.
Yeah, and they actually know that, and I believe that the capability is there to do a click on an RSS feed and add it to your collection on the phone. So I believe that they're working in that direction too, to make sure that that's working and putting together a program to support that. So it's a transition that they're making. They didn't build a store like the Zune podcast store. So they are kind of trying to transition away from the Xbox store, which is essentially the Zune catalog. Because the Xbox organization decided that they weren't going to support that catalog beyond 8.1 or 8. Well, actually, the Windows Phone 8 platform. So 8.1 had to be on its own kind of podcast experience. one other thing that I did this past week is I actually went up and visited the Apple iTunes folks in Cupertino, and was actually in the building of iTunes, which was kind of a weird experience for me.
So do tell.
I can't say a lot about it, but I just wanted to put it out there that I did kind of venture into uncharted territory on Wednesday of last week.
So they made you sign your life away. That's too bad.
Yes. Yeah. So it was really weird to kind of be there and kind of see that whole world. And I actually saw. I mean, it was kind of surprising in some ways and not so surprising in other ways. But I thought there was a lot of similarities between like the offices of Apple, and the offices of Microsoft. There was a lot of similarities. It's not what you would think that there would be. Apple is completely different.
Yeah.
And a lot of the same things go on there that go on at a company like Microsoft too. So but it was really kind of the Apple campus is very spread out.
Yeah.
I can totally see why they're looking to build a new spaceship,
Yeah.
kind of one consolidated kind of headquarters, is because they have a bunch of buildings scattered all over the place. And the same thing that has been the case at Microsoft for many years too. They had buildings with employees scattered all over the Seattle area, and they built some larger campuses right on the main campus that consolidated everybody. And I think that's what Apple needs to do as well. But it was interesting. I mean, I have to say, it was really interesting. It was really eye-opening for me, and I didn't have a lot of the knowledge about what was going on at Apple in the podcast area, kind of behind the scenes a little bit. So it was really good.
Are they listening to the space?
Totally. I would say that they're as engaged in the podcaster space that that I've ever heard or seen. I mean, they're definitely supportive, and they're hiring new people and things like that. So what can I say?
Well,
I can't really go into too much detail about what we talked about, but I think it's they are very passionate about the space, and they're supportive. They put out that new email address, podcasts@apple.com, and I think that was a big step forward for them. So if you have a concern or whatever, go ahead and shoot them an email, but just be respectful and just realize that it needs to be really, really important for them to get that email.
I call it a last resort email.
Yeah. Because I mean, they're a small team, and it is kind of like what I experienced being kind of that person at Microsoft is. And I always found that to be the case, is that people are very respectful typically. People don't send you an email for frivolous things typically, because they realize that you're busy.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I
mean,
we don't.
I've always had a positive experience putting my Twitter and my email account out there.
Yeah, we don't email them unless we absolutely have to, and it's and I get some direct contacts over there, probably like you do too, Rob. And it's just like I really think before I hit send, and I know that when I hit send, if they get something from me, they'll generally respond because they know I don't waste their time. So,
yeah.
But anyway, hey, we're close to the top right here at 90 minutes, so we need to wrap this thing up. Robbie, thoughts on next week? Who we should have in?
Actually, I've already invited. I'm trying to think if that would be next week or the week after. Anyway, I've got on the docket to have Alan Levy on the show, who's the CEO of a Blog Talk Radio.
Oh my goodness! I'll be listening to that one.
Oh man!
Yeah. So I talked with him yesterday, and
be sure to ask him about a new feed URL being implemented.
So, I mean, he's really, really positive about the whole space, and wants to be, I think, seen in a different light. but I think also he thinks he has some really good tools to help people publish shows, and he feels strongly that his reputation or his company's rep has been based on some of the shows that have been produced that haven't been producing it in the best way, but he has tremendous tools. It's just a matter of and I want him to come on and talk about it, because I think they've been working hard for many years to make producing podcasts easier, or producing shows essentially. I don't know if it's always been focused on podcasts, but in giving people online tools to be able to do that easily and simply. And I think the idea behind what they're doing is good. I think what we need to get into the weeds of is how that interfaces with professionally produced content.
Yeah.
And that's what he's going to come on and talk about.
And another thing too is we cannot run advertising on any Blog Talk shows.
Yep.
The advertisers refuse to allow advertising to be run in there. So it'd be good to have him on and kind of weed that out too, because he needs to understand from our perspective what we can't do for his clients. Largely, it's a number of factors. So it'll be an interesting discussion. Oh boy, Rob, you're ripping it up here. It's going to be good.
It's only just begun, Todd. There's other holes in the space, and I'm going to peel back the covers on.
Well, we were nice to John last week. I tried to be very respectful of his time and his position in space, even though we maybe differ in some thought processes and how stuff is laid down for announcing how much money you're making. But anyway, that's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Dave, thanks for being on. We really appreciate it, and it's been a great time chatting with you and getting caught up.
Yeah, it's always great to touch base with you guys, and like I said, I really appreciate the show.
And
I'm looking forward to next week now. If you want to learn about Blog Talk Radio, go to schoolofpodcasting.com, put Blog Talk Radio in the search bar, and you can find my well-documented opinion.
And we did get some emails last week from this. I would say we've got the most emails from any show last week. I want to thank Paul for his very lengthy email, and we got one from Tony as well, and a couple others that asked me not to say who they were, but we definitely appreciate your feedback. We definitely got some earballs last week on that show. I think people were expecting fireworks, and it maybe we disappointed them a little bit. But,
Todd, you did throw enough bombs at him. You were being nice.
Well, you have to be. You got to, you can't bring them in here and make them hang up on you. So. And John, again,
no, he's
John.
a good guy.
He's a good guy. He's very passionate, and we have to appreciate that. And what we need is everyone to have as much energy as he has.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
That's
great, and there's nothing wrong with kind of stirring the pot a little bit. It gets more listeners to the show, and we're all entertainers anyway, right? I can get up and do a little tap dance if we need to pick up a few more listeners.
Rob, I don't think where your camera's positioned, we would see your belt. You're
I'm not wearing a belt.
Something giant.
I mean, you don't even know what I'm wearing down here. Maybe not even wearing anything.
That's right.
I'm not standing up.
I'm not wearing pants, so.
All right, guys. Hey, emails to the show, Todd or Rob at newmediashow.com. We'll get it here. And we want to thank you for putting up with our shenanigans. But if you've got a guest you think we should have on, let us know. Or if you got questions for a guest, Dave, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Just go over to schoolofpodcasting.com, or if you want to email me or voicemail, whatever, go over to schoolofpodcasting.com/contact. Has all my info over there.
And I think your Twitter's at
Learn to Podcast.
At Learn to Podcast. All right, very, very cool. All right, Rob, thanks. And,
all right, thank you.
Everyone else, we'll see you next time. Take care, and aloha. Whoops. Okay, 1 second. We're still live. Bye-bye, YouTube.